Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy, Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me. And I'm back. I'm back with part 3 of What If Deku had a metal manipulation quirk. I will not sit here and talk for too long. I want to get right into the video. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Let's get right into the video. Let's get right into the what if. Let's get it. Izuku Midoriya watches the UA Sports Festival as he knows that he just sacrificed, well, any other bit of motivation and any other bit of momentum that would be given or that would be shown and given to via the agencies. He kind of basically threw it away. And in all reality, does it really matter in the long run? Probably not. Izuku decided to do this in favor of Shinso, feeling that he could actually get something out of this. And of course he definitely would. I mean, people would get a lot more eyes on Shinso, especially with him going deeper into the 1-versus-1 fights, but of course he would eventually lose. That would just be a foregone conclusion. But still, he would do decently well and show some signs of being a real hero. Izuku, though, would watch as everyone would finish up the UA Sports Festival, watching Bakugo and Todoroki take on each other, fight to the very, very end, Bakugo screaming at Todoroki to use his fire side, but it still seems that he's hesitant. Izuku would shake his head and even begin to speak from the crowd, screaming as if Todoroki could even hear him, yelling him to use that fire side. But in all reality, nobody's hearing him. Nobody hears what's happening, and nobody's going to hear much, if anything. So let's just be real. I mean, Izuku isn't heard and can't be seen, and Todoroki doesn't really know what he's even saying. But still, I mean, the thought is there, but Todoroki would still end up losing to Bakugo. The loss to Bakugo is something that Todoroki will hold near and close to his heart, and Bakugo himself would be frustrated. I mean, we all know Bakugo wanted to take down Izuku. That's one of the frustrations. And the other frustration is the fact that, well, Todoroki did try. I mean, yes, in a technical sense, he did try, but in terms of, well, utilizing his quirk to his utmost capabilities and using the fire side of his quirk, he didn't try. And in Bakugo's book, that is so much worse than just losing flat out. Bakugo would rather him lose to a Todoroki using all of his power, compared to, well, a Todoroki that's literally not even, well, using half of his power technically, right? So overall, Bakugo would be fuming with frustration, and on top of that would just be freaking out the entire time, yelling, screaming, saying that this isn't right, and saying that he needs to fight the best to truly be deemed as the best, and blah blah blah, so on and so forth, showing basically his full deck of cards right in front of everybody. Bakugo is kind of just shut up by putting a muzzle on him, and Izuku watches on as more or less Bakugo continues to freak out. Izuku doesn't really take this too much into account. I mean, let's be honest, he's seen Bakugo do some really stupid things over the years, and he's seen him get far madder than this. But still, I mean, we all know that there's going to be implications to what he's done and what he's freaking out over. But hey, I mean, I guess they'll have to see in the long run what happens. All Izuku wants to focus on is what's to come next. What does he have in front of him that needs to come next? Well, that's pretty obvious. The internships are coming up very, very soon, and Izuku is known by many all around, well, Japan. I mean, he's shown what he could truly do, even in the first bit of the obstacle course race and also the cavalry battle. So there's really no instance where Izuku wouldn't get a ton of offers, but it's really just what offers will he get? What type of offers will he get? And, well, who will he be able to even go and more or less internship with? He would look through his list as Aizawa would tell everybody to do so, and he would look through it to find that Well, he has some interesting choices. Nothing that is like too pop out, stand out, and insane, but he continues to look more and more and more, and eventually he would see something odd. It was as if it was at the bottom of the page, but he wonders why it was even at the bottom of the page. I mean, this is insane. He looks to see that it's actually Todoroki's father, other known as Endeavor. Endeavor, for some reason, wants to have Izuku come and actually work with Todoroki, but he wonders why. I mean, probably because he wants to have his son get stronger and he doesn't really care about Izuku at all, but he wants to know more. Why or what excites him or shows him that Izuku's powers alone would and will help Todoroki in the long run. So that's what he wants to know, and that's what he'll figure out soon. Izuku would watch as a car would pull up, and he would hop in that car and take it to Endeavor's agency. He would meet with Endeavor and also meet with Todoroki, but Endeavor would be screaming at Izuku the entire time, telling him that there is nothing that Izuku will learn here. It's only to help Todoroki. Izuku kind of shrugs this off. He doesn't really care and believes that this is the best approach, at least to train with somebody as strong as Todoroki, and just indirectly learn from Endeavor. Endeavor says he won't teach Izuku anything, but anything that he teaches to Todoroki, Izuku will be able to benefit from. So he begins to train with Todoroki, showing Todoroki what he can do and what Todoroki should be utilizing his quirk for. Izuku, through the power of, well, his very own talk no jutsu, would more or less get Todoroki to utilize his fire side, because his fire side is something that is very powerful and something that he can definitely use in the long run. And on top of that, he should be able to use his quirk because it's his quirk, not because it's someone else's quirk, and not because it's his father's or he has to worry about it being his father's quirk. But still, Izuku finally gets him to utilize both sides, the ice and the fire. And he tells Todoroki that utilizing it in full control is what truly matters. He wants to utilize it to the best of their abilities, and, well, he needs to realize that there's going to be downsides to everything. For his quirk, a 1 versus 1 may be beneficial. That's unless they get close to him, and that's unless he can't use his range to his advantage. What happens when someone gets right in his face? Izuku would show this as he uses his metal manipulation to more or less close the distance toward Todoroki. And eventually, when he gets that close, it feels that Todoroki is kind of in a different world. He's in a different headspace, in a different, well, place entirely. This is so much more difficult when someone is up close and personal, and Izuku made that clear, telling him that this is exactly what's going to happen. I mean, it's just a matter of time before he runs into somebody that can close the distance, just like he did right now. Of course, Todoroki would take this to heart. He has some respect for Izuku, and Izuku continues to gain respect by the days. And after a while would pass, they would finally go out to Hosu City and finally take toward more or less a bit of a patrol. This patrol would set them up in the long run. This patrol would more or less tell them exactly where they are in the spectrum of being a hero. Izuku wants to know what it's like to patrol, what it's like to go out there like a real hero and protect people. And, well, let's just say he'll definitely be able to do so because, well, an attack on Hosu City, the very own place that they were going to just patrol on, is exactly what they have to deal with. So when Izuku arrives, and so does Todoroki and Endeavor, they have to fend off a ton of Nomus and villains alike, in which Izuku and Todoroki together are actually pretty good. I mean, their tandem alone is pretty good. I mean, we're talking about high firepower with containment. Izuku can contain the villain, restrain them, and more or less allow Todoroki to hit a villain or a Nomu extremely hard. But this is when Izuku realizes something. The Nomus that are there, all these creatures, he begins to kind of feed metal into them, and he wonders if he can really utilize them, kind of like puppets in a way. he does feel that there's metal already within them as well, and he thinks that the villains truly haven't learned their lesson. I mean, yes, they may know about his quirk, but to what extent can Izuku utilize his quirk is what they don't know. He might be able to use just specks of metal scrap. I mean, maybe not right now, but in the future, he'd be able to use just little tiny specks, be able to control anything within their bodies, maybe rip all of the metal out of them and obliterate them in a second. But Izuku doesn't even know if he can do this yet. I mean, there's probably a good chance he can't do this, but still, it's a thought that Izuku has. He feeds metal into a Nomu that he finds, and he begins to slightly control it, and actually is able to neutralize it to a certain degree, and eventually would extract the metal out. Izuku would put the metal away back in his pockets and kind of have it just strapped to his leg, and well, that's all it took. It actually worked out pretty well. I mean, Izuku's pretty shocked about how well it turned out, but still, I mean, that's something insane. But during this time, Izuku has a realization that connects all of the things he has in mind. I mean, we're talking about the people around him, the people everywhere around him, and also the person that actually made him worry when he heard him on a cell phone. But at the same time, he forgot about this, not thinking too much about it. I mean, there's no way he would do something extremely drastic, right? He begins to hear Manuel screaming for Tenya Ida, asking if anybody has seen Tenya Ida. If anyone has seen him, he needs to find him. Izuku would freak out, thinking that Tenya must have followed through with something that is horrible, that is something he should have never done. Izuku immediately would climb a building and begin to dart off. Using the metal, he makes a bit of a surfboard and he begins to fly through the air looking for Tenya. Eventually, he would come across the alleyway that he sees a villain down on the ground, practically at his last leg, and Tenya Ida about to be stabbed through the chest by the hero killer. The hero killer goes to stab Tenya through the chest, but his blade stops midair and is unable to move. Just as the blade is about to be pulled back by Stain, the metal on the blade would break into pieces and would fly up to the sky. Izuku would catch all of them, balling them up into just a metal ball and putting it back in his pocket as he lands on the ground, telling the hero killer that this is not a fight he wants. He taps on his phone as it sends a signal out to Todoroki and also a group chat that he's in of where their location currently is at. Todoroki is currently fighting with his father, but now he's on hot pursuit on his way to help with Izuku's problem. Izuku would push back Stain using any means he possibly can. The blades that Stain has, though, let's just say are practically useless. Izuku has dulled them and destroyed them right before the fight even began, so all it is Stain trying to fight with hand-to-hand combat. And if he tries to leave and retreat, in which something Stain won't do anyways, but if he tries, Izuku can easily stop him very quickly too. All he needs, though, is Todoroki to give him the opening. He wants one opening. As he thinks this, and as he begins to have this thought process, ice begins to cover the area as it shoots through, grabbing Stain just enough to where Izuku can collapse metal all over Stain, chaining him down to the ground and eventually pinning him entirely. Without his blades and with only raw strength, there's no way Stain will be able to get out of the chains that are placed on him. Izuku continues to pile onto him and eventually would contain him entirely. Izuku would thank Todoroki for the assist, and Todoroki would just be shocked so much that he can't really respond to what Izuku just said. Izuku asks if he's okay, and Todoroki says he is. He's just kind of in awe at the fact that Izuku was able to do something like, well, that. How was he able to do something like that? Izuku just tells him that he's been utilizing his quirk and training with it for a while. So, I mean, he would hope that he can do stuff like this to give them the upper hand. But with that said, they would await the other heroes to arrive, in which when they did, Izuku would be forced to not take the credit for taking down Stain. But luckily, they saved Tenya Ida, they saved the hero native, and also they didn't have any other casualties. They didn't even really get injured themselves. I mean, Tenya did, but The rest of them didn't. Todoroki and Izuku didn't get injured at all. I mean, this was kind of a perfect scenario for Izuku himself, but still. After the fact though, Endeavor would get the credit for defeating the hero killer, and Izuku and Todoroki and also Tenya Ida would rest up in the hospital right before they're sent off back to UA. When they're sent back to UA, Aizawa would lecture them about what they did and how they did it, but still would tell them that they have a final exam to look forward to, so that's what they should be worrying about. They have a written and also a practical. He looks toward Izuku and says that they can thank Izuku, or they can thank Midoriya for how they're going to be doing the practical now. But that's all he'll say. He won't spoil the fun. Of course, Aizawa would stop talking, and everybody else would go about their days studying and getting ready for the final exam, because, well, the true final, the practical final, would be against the teachers. Izuku has shown them that robots are far, 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 far away from being practical. So the heroes decide to take all of them on themselves. I mean, this would be beneficial for the students and also their growth overall. So that's exactly what they're going to be doing, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Izuku would watch as all of his classmates get paired up with someone else, and also with a hero or with a teacher. Izuku would watch as everybody would fall in line, but eventually it would lead to him and Bakugo, two people that really don't get along, but at least have minor mutual respect. Izuku would basically tell Bakugo not to do anything stupid based on whoever they fight, and Bakugo kind of shrugs him off, saying that he'll do whatever he wants, but eventually the person that they'll be fighting shows up, and that is the one and only number one hero, All Might. Now this right here is exciting. Izuku is excited to an extent, but at the same time, he knows that this isn't the easiest and, well, is kind of an extremely hard matchup. I mean, there is no way around it. He has no idea how strong he truly is, and if All Might would be able to just break free from him, just be a pure strength. He has no idea. So they're gonna have to be creative. But Bakugo refuses to be creative. He says that he'll fight All Might by himself and he doesn't care. Izuku hears this and just gets frustrated. I mean, this guy, he's really stupid. But still, he awaits the gates to swing open for their final exam and their final practical exam, and when they do, they charge forward. Izuku grabs Bakugo and, using a surfboard, flies forward faster than Bakugo would be able to explode. Of course, Bakugo explodes as well, so that they sling forward at insane speeds. Izuku would throw Bakugo forward, and before All Might could really even react, Bakugo was in his face, landing a massive punch and then an explosion. Izuku would follow up with metal spikes, sending All Might's way, but All Might would be able to just punch them and they would shatter to pieces. Izuku shakes his head as he continues to throw these metal spikes, as All Might would shatter them to pieces, metal scraps going everywhere as All Might does so. Eventually though, Izuku would get so much metal scraps from all around All Might from just throwing these small metal spikes that he would begin to actually utilize them to wrap All Might's legs. He does this and he makes All Might trip quickly, and it gives Bakugo a free explosion straight to the face of All Might. In doing so, this gives Bakugo a ton of openings, but Izuku can tell that they're not really getting anywhere. All he really has to do is escape. But of course, Bakugo's not going to want to do that, and he's not going to leave Bakugo here and while he escapes. So he stays. He continues to fight with Bakugo, trying to give him any openings, but it seems like there's just no way. I mean, there's no way All Might is going to fall to these little explosions, even when they start ramping up the explosions with the sweat that Bakugo has. Izuku, as a last-ditch effort, would maintain All Might, would basically push him and force him into place as Bakugo rips his strongest explosion possible. He does this, and Izuku more or less covers All Might as the explosion enters range, and it more or less condenses the explosion into one area. But as Izuku sees his metal shatter and break, All Might seems to be completely unharmed. Frustration would grow over Bakugo and Izuku's face. How are they supposed to do this? What is happening? How is All Might just not taking damage? But eventually Izuku would feel something. It would feel odd, as if he can see everything around him that's metal once again. He could feel the lampposts, the ground beneath him, the small bits of metal, or at least metal-like objects beneath them, the buildings, Bakugo's gauntlets, or partial parts of his gauntlets. All Might. Wait, there's metal within All Might. There's metal within Bakugo. Wait a minute. Izuku reaches out his hand and begins to focus harder than he's ever before, and he begins to focus on All Might himself, focusing so hard that eventually All Might is stuck in place, unable to move. Izuku is shocked, but All Might was wondering what is happening. There's no metal shards within him. How did he do that? How is he still? Wait. All Might realizes that there's small traces of metal within one's body. Yes, it's so minor. Yes, it's so minuscule. But can he really control that deep into someone's body? All Might looks over toward Izuku and feels that he needs to break free and more or less get Izuku out of here, because if he doesn't, well, that might become a major issue. Izuku would begin to send metal more and more toward All Might while he's giving himself the opening. Bakugo continues to attack, and eventually one of the explosions and one of the metal pieces would reach right to All Might's, well, place where it isn't the best to be hit. Near his rib cage and also his lungs, a piece of metal and basically a spike and an explosion would reach it, hitting it at just the right spot. That Bakugo and Izuku would actually land a clean blow to All Might. All Might winces in pain, and eventually they're able to get the capture tape around All Might, and they beat him. Everyone is completely shocked. I mean, this is All Might we're talking about. Did they just win? Of course, yeah, they did. And their teamwork is pretty damn good. I mean, that's undeniable, even if their coordination isn't the best sometimes. But their relationship obviously hinders the coordination just a little bit. But still, I mean, they did a hell of a job to neutralize All Might the way they did, and it showed exactly where they were in terms of, well, how good of teammates or future heroes they truly are going to be. With that said, though, of course, everyone's more or less final exam is over. Izuku is finally done with his, and now it's time for them to speak about what they're going to be doing next. The forest training camp was something that, to be threatened, if you didn't pass, you wouldn't be going. But that's actually not 100% true. You are still able to go even if you didn't pass. They would all be sent to the forest training camp, and the same old things would more or less happen. They would go there, they would get kicked off the bus, and they would get kicked off the mountain, and they would fight their way to the forest training camp. Izuku, on the arrival, would more or less figure out what they're going to be doing, what they're going to be doing to train, and Izuku is just excited to begin training, excited to begin just working and trying to get better. Izuku, in doing so, is just more or less trying to manipulate all the metal within the ground. Anything he can feel, anything that is out there, anything with even just a scrap, a tiny little minuscule, tiny, very little bit of metal he wants to be able to manipulate. And that's exactly what he's going to be working on. Will he be able to successfully do this all the time? Most likely not. I mean, this is something that he'll need to hone and get ready and learn how to do for a long time, or at least that's what it feels like. With that said, though, there's some things that would go extremely wrong in the forest training camp. Izuku decides that during one of the dinners, he'll bring some food to a little kid by the name of Koda. Yes, they've had a interesting run-in, and Izuku might have blocked his bit of his nut punch with a piece of metal, which wasn't the nicest thing to do. But also punching somebody in the family jewels is also not the nicest thing to do. But still, Izuku would go over to bring him food. When he would arrive, Kota wouldn't be too happy about this. He would arrive on his surfboard, more or less telling Kota that he really should eat. I mean, you know, a young boy like him, he needs to grow. You know, gotta get strong. Izuku laughs it off, and Kota makes fun of him because obviously Izuku's not the biggest kid in the world. So he kind of asks if he's just, you know, never eats anyways, or at least never eats himself. Izuku would say that's kind of messed up. I mean, come on, dude. That's not cool. But still, Izuku would tell him that it's some good food. He hands it over, and as they're talking, well, a voice from the forest would peek out and creep out, telling them that there's really no way for them to escape, and there's no chance they're going to live. Izuku turns, and well, let's just say a monster, a creature of some sorts. No, it's a man, a giant man would peek out, saying that both of them will be dying right now. Because, well, they don't need them. All they need is one Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku is shocked. They want Bakugo? Of course, Izuku steps in front of Kota, telling him to leave now, that he'll handle this. Muscular would tell Izuku that it's real impressive and real heroic. I mean, he's really impressed. But let's be honest, he has no chance here. There is no way Izuku will be beating him, and there's no way he'll be getting out of here alive. Izuku shakes his head, saying that's the farthest from the truth, and he can trust that. The fight between Muscular and Izuku is upon us, but that is for the next part of What If Deku Had a Metal Manipulation Quirk. And if you enjoyed, make sure to show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, and leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.